We've been lucky to have Sean Payton for the last month and a half. He is now joining us as he does Monday Live. We're bringing him in studio, and we absolutely love this. Great seeing you again, Coach.
Good seeing you guys.
So I want to start with the Cowboy thing. I was asking him during the break. So do you know as a coach, now you had a very good offensive line for your last several years, but are there matchups? Does McVay look at the film this week and say, I look at that defensive front, and I'm on a third-string center, and we're not going to be able to do anything down the field. Did you know, and again, this didn't happen to you a ton because you had very good personnel, but are there things on film that you can see going into a game as we can't run these plays?
Look, it's happened to me too. When you coach in this league long enough, and the most drastic week and a half, 2 weeks of what you're discussing, I was the offensive coordinator at the New York Giants. We had just beaten the Vikings in 2000, 41-0 to go to the Super Bowl. That was the good news. Now, the bad news was we were watching the Ravens beat the Raiders in the AFC Championship game, and that's who we played. And all week long as we studied the Ravens' defense really for 2 weeks because we had the bye. They were one of those teams that were fantastic defensively. And so as you went through the matchups, that's part of the game plan. And it becomes sometimes, at 10 at night, you're like, you don't see a first down. Like and then, but your job still is, and there was a great quote Bill used to say, Parcells used to say he got this from his old coach. There's a way to win every one of these games. You just got to figure out how. So despite that,
right.
And we spend a lot of time preparing for things that fit us, and that would apply to beating Dallas or beating the Ravens or beating whoever the opponent is.
Was that the best defense you ever saw on film?
It's the best defense that I was ever a part of seeing on film. I think it's probably the second best historic defense in our league's history to the Bears in '85.
Right.
But the players deserve a chance to win.
Right.
And it's our job to figure out how. And there are ways, whether it's the quick game, whether it's the screens, playing a game in a certain fashion. Like I thought Arizona yesterday, for instance, in their game against the Eagles, and I said this in the pregame show yesterday, I thought they played the correct game to win, and here they were in a fairly hard-fought, low-scoring game, and they go wide right with the kick.
Why did you think it was the right game?
I thought they did a good job with balance. I think the time of possession. The thing that scared me about that matchup was Philadelphia is the best first-half points differential team in football, and Arizona is 32nd in this.
So you're down 17-0, 20-0 or something.
So the key for Arizona in that first half was going into halftime where it's a hard-fought, balanced game. I thought time of possession was going to be important. I thought they did a pretty good job there. The balance was going to be important. So it was the type of game I felt Arizona had to play to win. Now, they didn't win, but I think that gets back to what we're discussing relative to seeing, let's say, you're playing Dallas, and obviously Sean has seen enough film on those guys. Both offenses are not going to put up a lot of points.
Right.
So what can we do defensively? What can we do in the kicking game? And then what can't we do offensively that prevents us from winning? And that is turn the ball over. That is, and right away early we got a sack, fumble, touchdown. And so there are certain things that keep you from winning games. That's the type of thing that can keep you from winning a game.
So guys like me sit out here and blah, 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 have big opinions, but I always try to back them with data.
Sure.
So the three things, I don't watch film, you do. If I'm going to criticize a coach, there's three things I always look at. Are you good situationally? Brian Daboll's team is good situationally.
Yeah.
And I think there's some limitations on the front.
No, I agree. That was an impressive win.
And I always think the best coaches of my life, year one, Jimmy Johnson, you can make adjustments in that 12 minutes at half. It's hard.
Yeah.
The third thing I look at coaches, so situationally, do you have your act together? And there are limitations. Are you capable as a staff of making adjustments? And the third thing is, do you get the ball to the right people? So I look at the Giants. Saquon now leads the league I look at New York, Sean, that looks like a well-coached team to me.
I would agree with you. And look, to your second point about adjustments, and granted, we bundle it into halftime adjustments, which makes sense. But we're getting these photos between series, and we have the tablets. I'm old school. I like the actual pictures. No big deal. And we're looking at them. And we're beginning to talk about what we want to present at halftime. And so, like, that's ongoing. In other words, our defense is on the field. I've looked at the pictures. Hey, make a note, guys. We got to get back to this. And at halftime, let's put in this. Not now. We've got another 8 minutes in the second quarter, but because literally when you get to halftime, if you're sitting down saying, all right, look, you've taken a pee, right? Everyone's done that. You've grabbed a banana or something to eat, and then quickly you've talked to your players and the whistle. I mean, it's really quick. So the adjustment that you're going to talk about at halftime is beginning to formulate itself in the first quarter as you gain information, second quarter. But to your point, you're making adjustments. I think your third point is extremely important. How are we getting the ball to our guys?
Saints did it yesterday with Taysom Hill.
Well, that was something.
Let's talk about that. I mean, that's why you loved him.
Well, I text Mickey yesterday, and he's my closest friend.
Mickey Loomis.
Mickey Loomis. He's the GM of the Saints. Yeah. And I said, hey, if you're uncomfortable with that $10 million salary, let me know in a year or two, and I'll take it off your hands. Look, I would love to have seen a game where John Madden covered Taysom Hill, because I think John Madden would have loved Taysom Hill, like all of us watching him, but Madden would have really loved this guy as a football player, because beyond all of it, he had 69 yards in return yardage. Deontay Hardy got injured, the returner, so he went to that position. He's rushing punts, recovers a punt fumble, has over 100 yards rushing, has 3 touchdowns, throws for a touchdown. And the last time that happened was LaDainian Tomlinson. I called Breeze last night, and I said, hey, you realize what our guy did today? And Breeze was like, no. I said, come on, the last time someone ran for over 100, threw for 3 touchdowns, or ran for 3 and threw for 1 was LT, and you would have been on the field with him. And LT was a real good, he could throw the ball.
Yes.
And so they would put in design passes. And having had a chance to coach him and be a part of his development, the greatest thing about him is he's such a good teammate. Like, I don't care where the player's from or who's on the sideline. They all respect him, and they love him because he's so unselfish. He's an L3 on the kickoff. And there aren't a lot of guys like that. And so that was fun watching that, because it's unusual, and now everyone's looking for Taysom Hill.
Yeah. So I think in this league, you're a great example. You have 10 more years of coaching if you want. If I was your agent, I'd say, be patient. Just make sure they've got a quarterback. I think it's virtually you and Andy Reid would figure out a way to kind of Sean McVay, some of you guys, very, very elite class. But I look at Matt Rule and I think Matt's a smart guy. I don't think you can win in this league if you're getting C- quarterback play. So everybody here can bang on Matt Rule. My takeaway is if I was Oklahoma or one of these unstable positions, I'd call him in a second, is how attractive, because I hear all these names for the Carolina job, how attractive is this job without a quarterback?
Yeah, I think it's attractive. And first off, the jump sometimes from a successful college head coach to an NFL head coach is larger than you think. It just is. Schematically, red zone, third down. And I say that respectfully because in college, it's a different job. You've got a certain amount of hours per week. You've got spring ball. You're recruiting. You've got a lot of things that are happening. I particularly don't like getting dressed up. But in college, as a head coach, you're going to be in dress shoes, slacks. I like putting a pair of Jordans on in sweats and going to watch film.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deal with a booster, and I don't really want to talk to the parent of a player.
Right.
And I want to coach. And yet, that's the college game. And so The transition, number one, is significant. But back to your question, is it an attractive job? Look, it's almost a unicorn, the open job with a great quarterback waiting for you to come in and be the foster parent.
I mean, Green Bay's the last one that had that
job.
Yeah,
I mean, can you imagine? Like, usually, generally speaking, it's somewhat broken. And you brought up something that I thought was really important. The timing of function versus dysfunction. And oftentimes, the better quarterbacks are going to dysfunction because they're going to the first pick of the draft, second pick of the draft, third pick of the draft. And then, by the way, when Ben slips a little and he's angry, well, it's a blessing he went to Pittsburgh. When Aaron slips a little and he goes to Green Bay, it's a blessing because he's going to
Mac Jones.
Yeah, those are good problems, but at the very moment they're happening, the short-term money and the short-term, knocking the ego, if you will, I thought I was going to go fourth overall. I get all that. But turning a program around, it's interesting. So we've got the divisions. There's 4 teams in each division.
Right.
And there's generally one on the top, and the other 3 are trying to knock them off. And if they don't do it in 2 or 3 years, they're out. That's right. And so I remember when I arrived in New Orleans in 2006, Gruden, a real close friend, was the head coach at Tampa Bay. They were the team. They had won a Super Bowl.
Good personnel.
Yeah. John Fox, good coach, was at Carolina, and Jim Mora Jr. was at Atlanta. I knew all 3 of them well. I worked with John Fox in New York for 4 years. He's a close friend to this day, both he and Gruden. And yet you realize all 4 of us are not going to be around in 3 years.
Right.
And then pretty soon in New Orleans, as we got to that spot, we kept track of the coaches. And I think our staff saw 14 different coaches in the NFC South.
Wow.
And it's just that little miniature king of the hill. And so
but you also got that quarterback right.
That was important.
Yes.
Yes. No. That was important. But he wasn't in the building. And so immediately, whoever's next to Carolina is looking at that. Is it in the draft? Do we have a hold the fort guy in free agency until we find it in the draft? Or is there a guy we like in free agency that we feel like can be a good player?
Okay, I'm going to throw this at you. Okay. I'm a Garoppolo fan. Now
I am too.
Okay. So you and I are on Garoppolo Island. And I watched him yesterday. And for a strong point of view offensive coach.
Yep.
Gets it out, gets it accurate, gets it quick. And so I look at Carolina and I think, I'd make a run at Garoppolo.
That's the discussion we have. We go in, we put up on the board, we put up in the building, right? Whoever's in the building at that position, and then we put in the league, and then when I say in the league, who potentially are guys that would be coming up in free agency, or who potentially are guys that might be, I like Teddy Bridgewater. Now he just got injured yesterday, but who are these options potentially in the league? In February, when I was in New Orleans, we had the second pick of the draft. It was the first year we were there, and we were studying closely Leinart, Vince Young, and we were studying closely Cutler. That was that class.
Yeah, I remember that class.
And in the meantime, we were looking at who was available. Josh McCown was on a flight to New Orleans. He's who we were signing as a veteran quarterback that could come in. Drew Brees became available. We were in negotiations with Drew. Miami was too. Drew agreed to our contract. Josh was connecting in Charlotte. He went back to the original city he was flying from. It's a true story.
Wow.
And so the search for who we're looking for begins immediately, and then where we're looking to find it is everywhere.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.